During that time that both Tori and myself were brought into Vatican City for me, through my parents, and for Tori, through losing his parents and coming as a future priest in training at the age of 13, a young Vatican girl had gone missing. Now, during that time, I later found out that there was a deep suspicion that the Vatican knew what happened to this girl and that there was foul play involved. All the way up to the Pope. They knew what happened to the girl, but they refused to reveal it or even tell her parents what happened because it would implicate the church in whatever that foul play was. Many years later, it was revealed that it had to do with money. Obviously, everything always has to do with money and power. And it came down to money laundering. The CFO at that time apparently had been in bed with some really bad people, and he was forced by threat to take their bad money and launder it through the Vatican Bank. Would launder the money through the Vatican Bank, which would clean it, and then he would redeposit it into their account, and their money would be clean and he would no longer be under threat. They threatened apparently to kill his entire family, and so he did it. The thing they didn't expect is that he ended up getting killed in a car accident right after he deposited this money, and therefore there was no way for him to refunnel that money back. This began a whole big thing where other people in the Vatican Church were now being threatened, and all of this stuff was happening. One, to cover up that there was any involvement in any of this, and now we have a missing girl. In order for this mob enterprise to get their money back, they stole a Vatican girl who was of value to the higher ups because she was the daughter of somebody that was very important in the administrative office. They were going to hold her and threaten to hold her until the money was funneled back into their account. She was held hostage to ensure that that money would be returned. The thing is, the Vatican couldn't have anything to do with dirty money or even the implication that somebody in their network was doing something like this for any reason. And although a body was never found of the girl was never returned home, and the Pope actually told the parents she's with God in heaven now. How does he know that when she's still missing? Does any of this have to do with me or Tori? Especially Tori? I think it shows a pattern of the church. It shows a pattern of corruption. It shows that there are things at play that we don't associate with churches. We associate churches with goodness and healing and helping and support, guidance for those times that we feel weak. We don't like to associate churches and holy people with vile things, and yet it is present. And in this case, this was a deep secret, a deep, dark secret that was being kept from the public. And it was also something that caused a young girl to go missing and to never be seen again. It caused the parents to never be able to know what happened to their children when obviously the Pope did. And now we have this strange thing that's happening to Tori. I also didn't know what all of this meant. I didn't understand it. I couldn't understand what was happening, and all of the energy within the Vatican and within the offices. It was eerie. There was a level of secrecy and a talking and darkness that always seemed to be hovering around the inside of the Vatican amongst all of those who worked there, including the holy people, the ones that were supposed to be keeping everyone safe. And we all know that amongst the holy are people who prey on children. And it would seem that something crazy was happening. Not only was I worried about what the priest was doing to Tori, but I was worried that there was something much more sinister at hand, because all of this was happening at the same time that the feverish peak of the story of the missing Vatican girl and all the secretiveness and all the gossiping within the walls of the Vatican and inside the administration, and listening to my parents talk about the missing girl and the secretive things that people are saying, and that the church understood. They knew what was going on and were not telling people. There just seemed to be a strange frenzy around this topic, and somehow it was tying into what was being done to Tori, and I needed to find out what that was. It was so sad to me watching Tori get into that crate that would have become his coffin, and that he didn't protest or fight. That he was so gentle, but not only that, but he was broken. He had undergone so much trauma, and God knows what else the priest had been doing to him or saying to him. But clearly something was going on, because I saw a change in Tori. But I waited. Tori got into that coffin, and he didn't even put up a fight. The priest, happy with himself, just looked at him as if he accomplished something that he was supposed to accomplish, proud of himself for doing something horrible to somebody. And there was the full intention. I just knew that he had planned to leave him in there, but I didn't understand what he was saying, and I didn't understand why he was doing it. But there was so much corruption going on at that time, and it just wasn't good, but it felt tied into all the evil and the things that were going on within the sanctum of the Vatican. Something dark was looming within the church walls, and I knew not to step out at that moment. I wanted to run in there and immediately start yelling at the priest and you know, trying to get Tori out and yanking the key that he locked him into that crate with. I wanted to do that, but I had to be smart about what I was about to do, and I had no idea how to get Tori out of there, but I was going to get him out. As soon as the priest walked out of the cave area that he had Tori locked up in that crate, that coffin box, I waited. I just waited for him to walk out the door and out of sight. I hid behind this rocky crevice behind the cave dwelling that they were in, because I knew the priest would walk out and go towards the door, which was the opposite way. So I knew that I was safe to just hide behind that crevice. And I waited for him to exit out of sight before I entered to save Tori. I just yelled out, "Oh my God, Tori, are you okay?" And he looked up so surprised at my presence, and my heart really ached for him, because he was so broken. He had no fire to even survive. Thankfully for him, people taking advantage of the brokenhearted brings out the devil, or the holy warrior in me, depending on how you look at it. So I just yelled at him, "Tori!" I shouted at him, "Don't give up on me. Got it?" And he looked at me and he nodded. The energy in him started to stir, and I saw that the beginnings of a flickering will to survive, to live. "I'm getting you out of this fucking cage." His eyes got big at my language, but he didn't protest. He laid there quietly for a moment, and in his Italian accent, he said, "Yes." His eyes were pooling with tears that hadn't welled over yet, and it broke my heart. but he quietly said, "Get me out of this," and he paused. Effing cage. And that was the best curse I would ever get out of Tori. When Tori said that to me, I went into action. I looked all over this little cave area for anything that I could find that would be hard enough to break the lock off of this coffin crate box that they had him in. This is the type of box that on one side, it was literally the size of a coffin made out of crepe material, so it wasn't incredibly strong, but strong enough to keep somebody from being able to get out. And it was locked with this, again, this big skeleton key type of padlock. And on the side of it, if you just think of a coffin, you know, coffin lids usually flip up. And on the side, just imagine the side of a coffin having chicken wire. He literally was put into this box where they could see him in a cage laying flat. And the more that I saw him there, the more irate I got. And I was frantically looking around for something to break, because I had no idea how fast someone was going to come back. I didn't know how quickly this priest was going to come back. I didn't know how many other priests or other people in the Vatican were in on this. I didn't even understand why they were doing this to Tori. That just lit a fire under me even more to get him out of that, because these people are powerful. They have the ability to say anything against you. They have their own police department. They guide everything that goes on there. So if they want someone to disappear, they will disappear. If they want somebody's story to be false, or they want to make somebody look like they're lying, they can make that happen because they control everything there. It's their own state, Vatican City, you know, it's their own city. They rule over that whole thing. I just needed to get Tori out of there as soon as possible. I had no idea what we would do next. My only goal was to get Tori out of there. So I looked frantically around for anything that I could use to break it. Fortunately, being in a cave, there were little stones here and there, but I needed something big enough that I could literally crash over it, that I could break that lock. And when I looked around in the little cave area that Tori was in, I couldn't see anything like that. So I had to move away from Tori, and I just saw this panic in his eyes, because I said, "Tori, I have to go outside of here and find something that I can use to break this lock." And the look of terror in his eyes of me leaving him in that room was so sad to do that, even to step away, but I had to do it. So I said, "Don't worry, Tori, I'm not leaving you. I am not leaving you, and you are going to get out of here. I have to find a rock in one of these other crevices that's going to break this lock." So I ran outside. I looked around the little areas, and I did find one. It was a boulder that I could hold, and it looked like it would be big enough to, if I banged on it a couple times, it would break off. So I ran back in with this heavy boulder, and I just told him, you know, shield your eyes a little bit. And I started banging away at this lock, and I kept banging and banging, and ultimately the lock itself didn't break, but it started to come apart as far as the nails that were drilled in. It started to lift away. The padlock itself was so strong that didn't break at all, but I knew if I kept banging on it, eventually I was going to be able to pry this lock off of the wood. You know, their mistake is that this crate was old wood. It was an old crate-like thing. So although someone couldn't kind of kick their way out of it, and that padlock was not going to break, the lock piece was not going to break, my best bet was to try and just keep banging it until it pulled itself out. The entire lock pulled itself out of the crappy crate wood, and it did. I kept banging it and banging it. I don't even know how many times I did it. And it was making a lot of noise. This is the other thing that was very scary, is the more that I was banging it, the more noise it was making. And I didn't care. It was like I was frantic. I was not going to leave without Tori, and I was going to get him the hell out of there. And both of us let out a gasp when finally we heard that big lock just hit the ground. I flipped that lid up so fast and just pulled Tori out. And once he was standing up and out of there, I just hugged him so tight. I got nervous because I heard the slam of a door the priest and Tori had originally come into, and I heard footsteps, and I knew we only had a few moments to get out of that room and try and hide somewhere within the catacombs to get away from them, because they must have heard something from outside. And now it wasn't just Father Chichetto, there were other voices coming down the catacombs. Thanks for watching.